then one kid raised his hand and said, yeah, but how does the semina get into the... The doctor was not ready for that question. I don't know if I can say that. You know? So anyway, even from like 11 years on, this is like these puzzling questions for us. So we know in ISKCON, brahmacharya, sannyas, even Prabhupada says the 3 ashrams, no sex, right? So it's an important concept. But we need sexuality, we need sex to have kids, to have at the very least to have kids. So if we think that brahmacharya is the future, no, it's not. Be a shaker. Check it out. It didn't work last time for them. So we have 3 esteemed panelists here to discuss this topic with us. And just for information, we're going to be recording their presentations. We will stop the recording when it's time for Q&A. So we want everybody here to feel that you can be very open and questions and any comments and discussion that may come out of that. So briefly, as an informal introduction, because I don't have a lot of details about these illustrious members of our panel, but I'll start first. Next to me on my left is Partha Prabhu, who's based in British Columbia, Canada. Again, those that have been coming to this conferences for years, you'll remember he's the guy that does the advertisements for the mantra retreat where he's out like chopping down trees and things like that. Says, be a man, come to the retreat. That's him. Also, the first year we arranged, we really packed it in the first conference. So we had like whole sports sections, all that. So he organized all of that. In addition, he is a founding member of the Grahasta Vision Team. He and his wife, Anuttama, travel around the world. They've been to Russia. I know they've been to Africa, South America recently, I think all across North America, Australia, teaching about Grahasta life and how people can be successful as devotees, as Grahastas, and dealing with some of the issues that come up there. So he's got a lot of background researching contemporary sources on sexuality and also Vaishnava understandings. That Mahatma Prabhu, sitting in the center, he's been ISKCON Guru for the past 15 years now. Well known for his disciple of Prabhupada, as is Partha Prabhu. Mahatma also has the whole line of fashions here, which was good. You didn't know those are all him. He does a lot of work counseling. He, of course, travels and preaches, and he has many, many disciples, and he's kind of become, he has a reputation, a positive reputation for a person who talks about these things in honest and open ways to help devotees recognize, what our challenges, what our opportunities for us to make spiritual advancement. Kind of along the lines of what Gopal was saying in the broader topic of being truthful and recognizes our own challenges and limitations. Next to him, who we were introduced previously, Gopal Hari Prabhu, I will add, in addition to his qualifications as a professor and a lifelong devotee, he is here representing a young Grahasta and a father. He has 2 kids, Sita and Balaram. Sita's 5. She's 8. Whoa. And Balaram's 5. Okay, so he has 2 kids. So he's going to kind of share some of those perspectives too. So we'll have we have until 1:30, I believe. Schedule. So I'm going to check the schedule.
Yeah,
1:30.
Over there.
So we will go till probably an hour, maybe a little less than an hour, discussing with the 3 panelists, and then we'll open up for conversation discussion from the floor. Okay.
We will not broadcast when
I said that. Secondary, we're not going to. Now, there was a second. Where's the other microphone? This we're going to. Okay, because we want to make sure that they have. Otherwise, it's a little bit inconvenient to try to pass this one. I don't know if it'll even reach. So I've got a few questions just to kind of start us out. So we heard about. We know that one of the 4 vows. Thank you for putting that up on the screen for us. No illicit sex. A lot of different understandings of what is illicit sex. So maybe we can start with that question. I want to go first to Partha. When we were planning for this panel, he was explaining to me some research that devotee Hari Parashan has done on this topic, some things that I had heard recently. So maybe we can start with that, and then we'll go to some comments from Mahatma and Gopal Hari, and then we've got a second question about the impact of this all on devotees. So let's start. I'm going to move aside so everybody can see.
educating Karus about what their understanding was an application of the principle of no illicit sex. And as Anuttama Prabhu mentioned, there's many different views on that.
Can you hold the mic real close?
Bhakti Swami Maharaj, he told me once that he considers that the principle of maintaining the marriage was more important than no sex vow. Radhanath Maharaj, when we were beginning our initiative, he was speaking with us, and he said he does not know of one instance where Srila Prabhupada made an issue of anyone's sex life. And he told us there was illicit sex, in his opinion, with a capital I, and illicit sex with a small I. And he considered illicit sex with a capital I to be extramarital affair, sex outside of marriage. And he considers sex life in marriage that's not strictly for procreation. He considers that illicit sex with a small I, and he does not consider that breaking the regular principle. We asked one guru that we had heard he was very strict about the principle, and we actually ran into him at Moscow at a festival, and we said, "Oh, we heard you're really strict on that principle." And he said, "No. He said, I preached the highest principle from the Vyasasan, but he told us, I understood from day one that if a couple gets married, his words were, it's going to happen. It's going to happen." I didn't have a problem with that. So there's different opinions, and I think still there's a degree of confusion that sometimes castas are likely not following that highest standard, and there can be some degree of guilt and doubt that maybe they're doing something sinful. And there is some anecdotal evidence. This was told to us by Anuttama Prabhu and also Tamahara were present, where Jayapataka Maharaj was relating an incident where it was reported to Srila Prabhupada that a disciple had gone to see a prostitute.
There's a first part of that story.
Yeah, go ahead.
A few years ago, it came to the GBC that there were some people that were advocating that the definition of illicit sex, which for many years the conservative, not consensus, is wrong, just the traditional, that illicit sex was anything, even within marriage, outside of sex or procreation. So some devotees were advocating that Prabhupada other places just says illicit sex means outside of marriage. Went to the GBC, what does it mean? In that conversation, one person who's now a GBC member, Guru Sannyasi, said, I was with Prabhupada. I was in the room. A devotee came in and told Prabhupada that they were having illicit sexual relationships. No details. He said, Prabhupada slammed his fist on the table and said, but you promised. So the whole GBC room there was a chill that went across the room, like, well, that's from Prabhupada. The next person to speak was, you mentioned Jayapataka Maharaj. He said, I was in the room when the devotee told Prabhupada, I'm having trouble controlling my sexual desire, I'm going to prostitutes. And Prabhupada told him, but you have a wife.
Yeah.
That was his answer.
Mm-hmm.
So at which point in time he kind of evolved, the discussion went on. So the official GBC position is, don't change the definition. We do have a very high standard.
Yes.
However, it's been published. We recognize the fact that not everyone's able to follow that at all times, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the whole background.
Yeah, and Tamahara's recollection was that another devotee questioned, well, isn't that still sinful if he's going to his wife for sex more than just for procreation? And Tamahara said that Prabhupada replied, that sex life within marriage, it's not sinful, but it does not bring spiritual advancement. And the research done by Hari Parshad, it kind of illustrates this point from a Shastric point of view. So maybe we can have someone read this. Is there a mic we can pass?
Celibacy for a householder is of 4 types. It should be understood that a householder should always avoid ladies other than one's wife. That is a constant rule for the householder. Besides that, in Grahastha Brahmacharya Dharma, there are 4 shades, varieties, or standards.
And this is from the Kricha Kalpataru, and what follows.
What is that?
Next. It's a shastra about dharmic ethics for grihastas. And it describes these 4 different shades or varieties of following this principle. So someone can read these one at a time.
Number 1, Vimala, spotless, to completely avoid sex except for progeny.
So we understand that's the highest principle, which is generally was understood as the 4 regular principles. For a long time, that was accepted as the only standard. So next one, please.
2, Shukla, white, only on days subsequent to the menses.
The third.
3, Ratka, red, to avoid sex with one's wife on auspicious and fasting days.
So that's a little more regulated. And next.
4, Krishna, black, engage in sex with only one wife.
So that degree of regulation is, at least you're having sex only with your wife. And these are all contained within Shastra. And Hari Parsha gives more information on this. This is from Hari Bhakta Vilas. Someone read this.
Knowing well the dangers of sex outside marriage, an intelligent soul must engage in sex with one's spouse during the prescribed times of the month. Such sex is allowed at proper times when the spouse desires it.
Now, at the same time, also from Hari Bhakta Vilas, next verse.
Although all these activities have no utility in the domain of bhakti, I have still made mention of them here because they ought to be known for one who is a householder.
So we just want to emphasize the point that the purpose and goal of this discussion is not just sex. The importance is for householders to understand these different standards so they can be peaceful in their ashram. So I'm just going to continue here. This is the Srila Prabhupada quote. Again, someone?
Srila Prabhupada, one who, however, follows the rules and regulations of married life, having sexual relationship only with his wife, and that also under regulation, is also called brahmachari.
So these 4 standards, as counterintuitive as it seems, are actually considered brahmacharya in Grihastha ashram because the individuals have accepted some degree of regulation, greater or lesser. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur again on this point. And Hari Parsha mentioned he thought Srila Bhaktisiddhanta would be extremely strict on this principle. But this was Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's advice.
A person who has attained proper age, who understands the directions of Shastra, should decide on performing Nishicharya, sex with one's spouse at the prescribed night time. Thus, for protecting one's Grihastha Dharma, a person engages in Vaita, allowed activities of Upasana, and this regulates Upasana Vega.
So this is important. It's for the protection of one's ashram. And the reason I originally became involved with the Grihastha Vision team was because of seeing the catastrophic number of divorces that were occurring in our society. And the outside world was, at this time, still close to about 50% or less. I calculated a list once of all devotees I personally met, who were grihastas, and how many were still married. 70% of them had divorced. I was shocked. Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj told me he had been to places in the world where he considered the divorce rate to be 80%. And we heard similar things in Russia and other places we traveled in. That is a serious problem. It begs a very serious question of how we're applying these standards. So here we see even Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur he's recommending these different standards. So from Srila Prabhupada's lectures, here's some examples that Prabhupada is speaking about different standards. Okay. The highest standard. Therefore, in Vedic civilization, sex life is allowed only in a restricted way. It is for the married couple and only for begetting children. Purport 3:30:20. So that's the strictest standard. Standard 2. Those who strictly follow the rules and regulations of householder life engage in sex only once a month at the end of the menstrual period. Srimad Bhagavatam 5:13-14.
When the woman is most likely to get pregnant.
Yeah. And standard 3. So according to Shastra, if one lives with one woman, one man, they are also brahmachari, not many. If one cannot give up sex life, let him be satisfied with one man and one woman. This is also tapasya. That is also brahmachari. Lecture June 25th, Caracas. There was a interesting dialogue Prabhupada had with Hayagriva. And in that conversation, Srila Prabhupada was describing grihastas. And Prabhupada, I was a little shocked when I read it. Prabhupada said, oh, grihastas, the husband's working all day and he comes home and the wife cooks nice prasadam. And I was surprised, Prabhupada said, and then they enjoy nice sex. With Prabhupada's word. You can read this, it's in Dialectical Spiritualism and a conversation about the philosopher Comte. And Prabhupada was describing how the householders are having sex. But he said, important thing, he said, in this way, they can become peaceful and execute their real business spiritually. So the goal isn't sense gratification. The goal isn't to go to the highest standard, to the lowest standard. The goal is how to get to the highest standard. And at the same time, be peaceful in your ashram so you can live peacefully. Srimad Bhagavatam, the highest standard, religious sex is also permitted, but only in marriage for begetting children and not for sensual exploitation of the body. I'm sorry, the reference wasn't put in this version. Standard 2, as a commander very easily conquers invading plunders by taking shelter of a wife, one can conquer the senses which are unconquerable in other spiritual orders. So Hari Parsha, it was interesting, he mentioned Srimad Bhagavatam was spoken to Maharaj Parikshit, who in the last moments of his life, last days, he's renounced everything. So obviously, Sukadeva Goswami is not going to go in a lot of detail about other aspects of life, because he's one thing in mind, he's leaving his body in 7 days, he wants the essence. But as Sanatana Goswami mentioned in that quote from Hari Bhakta Vilas, he said that this conversation doesn't really have its place in the realm of bhakti, but householders should understand these principles, again, so they can be peaceful in their ashram. And very interesting, there's results of different shades of this brahmacharya. So with the Krishna black variety of brahmacharya, a householder attains discipline. So you will come back, if that's, at least you follow that standard, you will come back to this world.
This world means earth.
Earth, yes. With the Rakta red variety, he attains the realms between heaven and earth. With the Shukla white variety, he attains Svarga, heaven. With the Vamana, spotless variety, he attains liberation. So this very much changes the paradigm from the previous paradigm, which still exists in some places, that if a householder couple is having sex other than procreation, it's sinful and they're going to get sinful reaction. But as Srila Prabhupada said, it's not sinful. And here it very clearly points out that if you want to go back to Godhead, you need to become free from sex desire. And the previous paradigm, it just created guilt. The householders were not following the highest standard, feeling guilt. And guilt doesn't really motivate. Whereas understanding what the highest goal is, that gives you motivation to do it. And again, this is extremely important for Treehouse does to realize that their goal is to be peaceful in their ashram. And we're going to discuss this later, what some of the effects of paradigms and effects have had, but especially in terms of family life and children, it's very important. And
I want to bring in Mahatma soon, so
Sure,
more
okay.
slides.
And one more slide. Oops, did I go backwards? No, backwards.
The same, we just saw that one.
Yeah. No. It's not the last slide. Anyway, I'll just read the last quote, Bhagavad Gita 5:23. Before giving up this present body, if one is able to tolerate the urges of the material senses and check the forces of desire and anger, he is well situated and is happy in this world. So even in Krishna Bhagavad Gita, he's acknowledging you may not come to that highest platform immediately. It may take time. But Krishna is saying before giving up this body, so some of you have a lot of the time, some of us have very little time. But the goal is ultimately to come to that platform.
So Mahatma stepped out for a second, so just before he's going, you threw in divorce in this conversation. There's no connection there. We have this sort of high. Can you make it?
Yeah,
what's the connection?
I've witnessed so many things in my life, and one is extremely painful to see how children are affected by this. I've read the research on it.
Don't go there yet.
Sure.
Just you mentioned there's different understandings of illicit sex. We're meant to come permanently free from sex,
Right.
and then you threw out divorce. I think you were saying that where there's couples where they have a disagreement over what that principle
Have a
means
disagreement,
leads to divorce, but you didn't make that point.
Sorry, I'm sorry. I've seen couples who tried to follow that highest standard. In the name of doing that, they would stop doing service together because they were afraid there would be some attraction. They would stop reading Shastra together because they were afraid some physical attraction might arise. They stopped revealing their minds to each other because they're afraid some attraction is going to develop. And then after some time, they have no sense of connection. They've given up all those other forms of connection, and then all of a sudden you wonder, why this couple divorced? Because they hadn't really developed a sense of connection. So again, even Srila Bhakti Siddhanta was saying, you have to do what's best for the marriage or the relationship. Otherwise, it can create havoc in terms of divorce and many other problems.
Thank you. Mahaprabhu, you serve as both a initiating guru within ISKCON, you've been a devotee in ISKCON for more than 5 decades. You're a counselor, you give seminars on how people can be honest with themselves and make steady spiritual advancement. What are some of the negative paradigms around sexual relationships and intimacy that you've seen in ISKCON and in general? How do you respond to those? How do you counsel people?
Well, I haven't done it that much, only 3 times. I have a sexual workshop on sexual purity. First time I did the workshop was in Alachua, 16, 17 years ago. And the most common feedback I was given was, this is the first time I ever spoke about my sexual challenges. And what a relief it was. So we've got Partha saying, we've got the standard, which is a little cloudy. We're not sure what it is. But we have a man's body, and we know what that is, and we know what that does. And we think, well, maybe I'm uniquely fallen because this desire within me is like so strong, and look at all these other devotees. You couldn't possibly have it as strong as I have it. And when I was 13, I had started having sex, and I had 4,000 girlfriends since I became a devotee, and so I'm the worst. So it was important for everyone to realize, no, we're all the same. And I think one of the big differences between sannyasis and renunciates and the rank and file is they're just better at controlling it. Because when Prabhupada gave sannyas to Vidyadhana Maharaj and Sasura Maharaj, he said, don't think by taking sannyas you will be free from this, but now you can't give into it. So there's a lot to be said about tolerating it. Like, more more advanced people tolerate it. It's not that they're not attractive. I was on Sankirtan, I did Sankirtan for many years, and I can remember this to this day. I met one woman on Sankirtan, and that was the wrong woman. I didn't do anything, but I carried her home. After, thousands of, so no matter how renounced we are, there's always one, right? Maybe you haven't met her yet, or maybe you have, maybe you married her. So I think it's extremely important to be able to talk openly about our sexual challenges and not be embarrassed, because I can guarantee you we all have the same, and we're all basically pretty much in the same league. Some are major, some are minor, but there's no Pee-wee League or Junior League. We're all in that same difficulty. And I want to ask a question. Is there anyone who doesn't want to go back to Godhead in this lifetime? Can you raise your hand? So you know the standard you're striving for. So first thing I would say, like Partha is saying to people, as long as you know this is the standard, then you figure out where you're at now. That relieves it, because you don't give it up. And this is a huge problem. Like, I can't do that, so the perfectionists are all or nothing. Okay, well, just, don't even try, because I can't do it. And the guilt's all up here, right, because I'm trying to do what I can't do. And I was going to take sannyas, and I got married. You know how guilty I felt. It's like, I felt like I'm a failure. But you talk to my wife, she's like, yeah, I saved you. That was like the best thing I could get, because you were like such a loser. It's an ongoing joke. I was living basically in a closet with Gunnar Grimers on a bus, and said, I saved you from that closet. If you didn't marry me, you'd still be living in that closet today. And the way you dressed, you look like a total loser, you'd still be dressing like that. So, yeah, it's true. I'm going to get around to answering your question directly, because I'm remembering something that's so interesting.
I just realized why sannyasis only wear one color on all three parts of their outfit, because they can't figure out otherwise. They don't have a wife to tell them how to dress. I never realized that before.
So there's a devotee astrologer. She's born in like 6 generations of astrologers, and she told me something so funny, because we were talking about these topics. She said, if both the husband and wife are in the mode of goodness, their romance is reading Bhagavatam together. They don't need to have sex. Chant japa together, worship the deities together. That's where do they go on their honeymoon? Las Vegas or Vrindavan? No. So it's important, if you're not married, to get a mode meter and see what mode you're in and what mode your wife's in, because if you're in different modes, that's a huge problem. So as Partha Prabhu was saying, I think the concern of all of us over the illicit sex issue is the guilt that it creates in being normal. So this is the thing that I hate most about ISKCON. Well, maybe I could say I hate most about a misunderstanding in ISKCON, that we make people feel guilty for being normal. Yes? And that like breaks my heart. I can't like deal with it. I gave a course on self-care to deal with that, because it's such a pervasive problem. So especially for men, if you all think that all the other men are like brahmachari grihastas, like no problem, you're going to feel extremely guilty. If we let everybody open up and talk about it, misery loves company, they're going to feel like, that's normal. Yeah, then you're going to feel relieved. You're just like a normal person struggling. So I'm 75, I've been a devotee, I'm on my 56th year. I can testify that this was the most difficult thing in Krishna consciousness, controlling this one desire. And I often, at times, wish I didn't have a material body, because it'd be a lot easier to control that desire. Because sometimes that desire, it's not in our head, it's in our body. Like I don't even want it. Like, why is it there? Well, it may have to do with that sabji you ate last night at 11 o'clock. It had a lot of curd and tamarind. That and peanut butter and cheese. It may have something to do with that, because your mind's like, I just want to serve. So that's a reality. It's just a reality for all of us. So I think in terms of guilt, recognizing that this is normal. You have a material body, and then like Partha says, find what you can do with the goal up here, because you're gonna, by doing what you can do, if that's your goal, that you're always looking to that. You know, like you say, okay, with my wife, we're gonna have sex once a month. You know, and then 1 month comes and you're like, whatever, forget it. We'll put it off, and that could go on for months, the rest of your life. Was that what you were asking?
Before I go to Gopal, I just want to mention one thing too that I think we have to keep in context. I know with myself, okay, because I also have senses I'm trying to regulate. If I see what appears to me as an attractive woman walking on the street, I have a choice. I either look or I don't look, or I look longer than I know I should not look. And I've observed, if I allow myself to look, the lust does not go down. And I think that's an important principle that is described, and there's these different levels, but it's not like the person who's only having sex with his wife. He has no sex desire for other women. He's probably got 10 times more sex desire for other women because he hasn't restricted himself further. So just to make that point that the goal is to get rid of desire for anything material. Sex, especially for men, is the particular way that we get, Maitunya Agara, and that we're understanding that yes, there's different levels, and I'm opening the door for increasing that desire in my heart, and we have to be careful of that. Gopal Hari, you're the only one here under 107 years old on the panel. So maybe share some thoughts on anything you've heard, but particularly, what do you think are the impacts of this discussion or lack of this discussion with young people that you've seen in the movement? I'll come back and maybe ask the other two panels to discuss that as well. Is that a concern for us?
For sure, I think this is such an important topic to discuss. It's so nice to discuss it as you all mentioned, because we all are faced with it. We all have this challenge, and then in association and supporting each other, we can overcome it much easily. And to Mahatma's point, I used to wonder, Srila Prabhupada said that the tongue is the hardest sense to control. And I said, once you come to Krishna consciousness, the tongue is pretty easy. You've got gulab jamuns, samosas, it's not hard to control the tongue. It's the sex desire that's hard to control. So, very much so. On this general topic, one reflection that I have is many times when we think about this in the context in Krishna consciousness, we tend to think of it from subconsciously from a Judeo-Christian perspective, that it's either sin or not sin, right? Sin or not sin. And that was nice. The presentation was very helpful, and your comments also, because in the way Krishna is describing things in the Gita, he says there's foods in the mode of goodness, passion, and ignorance. There's austerity in the mode of goodness, passion, and ignorance. There's charity in the mode of goodness, passion, and ignorance. In the same way, sex life is also transcendental, where Krishna says, I am sex life, which is not opposed to the scriptures, and then it's in the mode of goodness, passion, and ignorance. And for my own self, I can say, while we cannot avoid the desire, we can at least, what we can do, Prabhupada says, bhakti is the process of transformation, right? It's not negation, but we have to transform it, is that we can avoid the passion and ignorance, sex life in the modes of passion and ignorance, try to bring it to the mode of goodness. And by this, what I mean is so much of the modern society and modern approaches to sex are all about control. And I think that's what pornography is, because there's no physical pleasure there. There's no sense of touch, but it's the very mode of ignorance, feeling of control, that I can see someone like this, I can exploit someone like this, that gives people the desire, the thrill, or not always, we all suffer, but that we can reflect on and say, look, but that's not giving me any pleasure. So
can I transform this? Can I uplift this to a positive relationship, and with a more uplift my consciousness, so I approach sex life more in the mode of goodness rather than passion and ignorance. On the same point, abstaining from sex life in family life, for my own self, I found is a very positive thing, because both my wife and I noticed that the illicit, unplanned sex life generally, in our case, what we found led to conflicts. So when we follow the principles, there's hardly any conflicts, and what we find in our own life, if we don't, it's almost like clockwork. That day we're going to have a big argument, and I realize it's the mode of passion, right? Because we cultivate the mode of passion, and they were passionate, and we tend to So different people, I guess, have different experiences in this. And so along with that point, if someone has a strong desire for it, and we completely ignore it and we stop it, that can lead to an even greater conflict, right? So sometimes to avoid the bigger conflict or even divorce, the dissatisfaction of not having that desire fulfilled, we can have regulated sex life. Knowing that, okay, that's better than the bigger conflict. But then we also experience, and I talked to a few grahasthas, they had the exact same experience, that even in the regulated form, let's say once a month, all these things, after some time you start to notice it's really not bringing me happiness, because it leads to conflicts, or I'm not feeling so attracted to that mode of activity. And my relationships are actually much deeper, and I have more meaningful relationships. One time I was on a flight, and this man was speaking to me, who was a philosopher. Somehow he is really good philosopher. He was on TV, and you're talking, and he brought up this topic, and he said, so many people, they think that relationships is just about sex, but it's like, he said, we just got it wrong. Like, that's like the least important thing in a relationship. And he said, with my wife, there's so many things, and I don't know why we make it all about, we think about so much about it in terms of sex, but actually, speaking with her, talking with her, going on a walk, all these things are so much more meaningful in my life than what that one activity is glorified to be. And I think as devotees, it's a natural progression. Right after marriage, you don't have that realization, but over the years, you start to realize what gives me real, satisfaction is the relationship, and not the physical, sex life. So that's just a little bit on my own experience. And I was reading through, and I found one very nice verse, and I just want to share that from the Bhagavatam, that Prabhupada is talking about the same point, that illicit sex life is more about control than anything else, that actually we can transform that desire. So there's a section, and we were actually reading it on the way here on the van. Yayati, King Yayati, and Devyani, and Sarvishna, and Yayati, even after 1,000 years of enjoying with his wife, at the end he's saying, I'm still not satisfied. Even after 1,000 years of doing this, my desires are not going. And then he answers the question himself through an analogy: how do you get rid of it? How do you get rid of this desire? And in answering it, his answer to that question is this verse. So let's go here. I had it and then I just lost it. Yes. So this is Bhagavatam 9:19-15. And this is his answer to the question of how to overcome sexual desires. He says, when a man is non-envious and does not desire ill fortune for anyone, he is equipoised. For such a person, all directions appear happy. So it was almost like, when this verse came, it was like, this is a different topic. Like, we weren't talking about it, but he says, when a man is not envious and does not desire ill fortune for anyone, he is equipoise. For such a person, all directions appear happy. And Prabhupada writes in the purport, Prabodhananda Saraswati says, Vishwa Purna Sukhayate. When one becomes Krishna conscious by the mercy of Lord Chaitanya, for him the entire world appears happy. And he has nothing for which to hanker. On the Brahmabhuta stage of the platform of spiritual realization, there is no lamentation and no material hankering. As long as one lives in the material world, actions and reactions will continue. But when one is unaffected by such material actions and reactions, he is to be considered free from the danger of being victimized by material desires. The symptoms of those who are satiated with lusty desires are described in this verse. Now, this verse doesn't describe anything about lusty desires, but Prabhupada is saying the symptoms of those who are satiated with lusty desires are described in this verse. As explained by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, when one is not envious even of his enemy, does not expect honor from anyone, but instead desires all well-being even for his enemy, he is understood to be a Paramahansa, or one who has fully subdued lusty desires for sense gratification. Thank you.
I'm going to go back to Partha. You've done a lot of work with your division team. Can you pass the mic? Mike, Gopal, hurry. These two men are in the mode of goodness. You see, they expect them. We're over here in passion. We want to move on to the next question. Partha, you've done a lot of work with Cross Division Team about sexuality and how oftentimes, from my previous conversations with you and read some of the stuff, about oftentimes because there's a lack of happiness or sense of satisfaction in other aspects of the relationship, that we think we can only pacify that through physical sex or even subtle sex. So can you explain that a little bit?
Just like the word conjugal, generally we think the word conjugal refers to sex. If you look at the definition of conjugal, it's things related to marriage. So what's related to marriage? You've got a job, you're going to work, that's related to your marriage. You've got kids to bring up, that's related to your marriage. You've got a lawn to mow, that's related to your marriage. Maybe you've got kids and you have to change diapers, that's related to marriage. So are all those activities conjugal, part of a conjugal relationship? And the answer is yes. It's a part of the relationship. And all those activities, if they're done in a mood of love and service, it's actually a conjugal relationship. And what we're trying to have is conjugal relationships in bhakti, in marriage, that we're serving each other and engaging in these different activities in this mode of service. So like you're describing how for Grihastas reading Srimad Bhagavatam together, that's like a romantic activity. There's a certain kind of intimacy there. And so if marriage was an equation, a peaceful, stable marriage, there would be different factors. So in mathematics, you have an equation, there's different factors. You have to calculate each factor correctly to get the correct sum. So for a healthy relationship, in Krishna consciousness, there's going to have to be different factors that you calculate. And so one is emotional connection. Are you emotionally connected with your spouse? Are you able to share your thoughts and feelings and desires? Can you listen to your wife?
Well, now you get to
There's an intellectual connection that you're maybe reading Shastra. And that's also a spiritual connection. There's a connection of shared activities that you're doing different things together. So there's different doorways to affection and connection. And again, if you neglect those other doorways to affection and connection, it's going to put all the weight on the one thing, which is sexual affection. So different factors, and there's also non-sexual affection. I remember one time my daughter asked my wife, he said, "How come you and Pita never hug?" She said, "Oh my gosh, we never like hug in front of our kids." So we're setting this example. So we started having hugs in front of our kids. They never saw that. I just realized, God, that was so unhealthy not to show affection in that way. So there's non physical sexual affection, and also in that equation, unless you're in the pure mode of goodness, Paramahamsa, there's going to be a factor of sexual attraction that you're also going to have to calculate and consider in that equation. And again, if you neglect the different factors, you don't balance them, it can be problematic. And again, as this presentation of the verses showed up from these different shastras, the goal is to give it up. That is the goal. The question is, how are each individual couple going to get there? And they have to work that out individually themselves. It's very important.
Mahatma. There may be one or two of us in this room that are not completely situated in mode of goodness, completely free from sex desire. So for those one or two hidden in the corner somewhere, what advice or solutions do you offer when you counsel devotees in general? And what advice would you give to us? You've been speaking very practically about the fact we all in men's bodies, this is a primary desire of our materialistic consciousness. So what solutions and hope? We've understood the standards offer some flexibility, but what practical things do you offer to us?
As I said before, first thing is be real. Get real about where you're at. Don't deny it. Like we were talking about being honest. We didn't have a chance to talk about lying to yourself. That's another level. So don't lie to yourself. But like I said, because you feel bad, you think something's wrong with you, and you want to pretend there isn't. So, and of course, when you feel bad about the fact that you have sexual desire, which you think is stronger than it should be, you want to suppress that feeling because it's an unhealthy feeling. So then you start lying to yourself or denying. Even you're looking at pornography, you may deny, well, I'm just doing it because I'm so stressed at work, So you have to be real about the problem, because you can't deal with the problem if you deny it, and you can't deal with the problem if you think it's bigger or smaller than it is. So that's where it starts. And one important thing is play out the future movie of your life. So as you go on, say, if I live this way, what's going to look like? And I think that's extremely important, because that's how intelligence works. That's what intelligence gives you. It gives you the ramifications. So you always have to look at the ramifications. And often it's said that the pain of control is only a little bit, like that temptation, you just, it took you 3 seconds to pull away. If you engage in it, what to speak, if you have a relation, the pain of that I fell down with this woman, that's with you for the rest of your life. So the pain of control is always much less than the pain of giving in. And so it's always important to remember that. That's one of the most important things. Anytime you're tempted, it's only like a few minutes that you have to deal with it. Run away, jump, take a cold shower. One time we were distributing books at the airport on Thanksgiving for 15 hours, and they were doing construction work, and they were gluing things with cement glue, and we all got intoxicated. Like, we came back at night, we were laughing and joking, and like, we took the shot and we didn't clean it up. I was like, oh my God, we're intoxicated. I jumped in a cold shower. Sometimes like the t-shirt, what is it? Oh, if Maya comes, run. So these are reminders. Sometimes it's just like, uh-oh, here comes trouble. You see her walking down the street. So that is going to be difficult, because Daito Vishampam, it's already feeling good, and chemicals are starting to go. But you pull away. And if you're married, guys, if you're married and you're like, you want to freak your wife out, totally tell her that you're attracted to another woman when you're walking down the street with a cheap beautiful, I'm so attracted. And make sure she doesn't have a pot in her hand. Women don't think that men do that. And I think as a service to your wife, you don't do that. Because it's like you know, I always talk about women being chaste. I'm like, my God, it's the men who need to be chaste. They're much more unchaste. I don't understand Bhagavatam says women. I don't know any man who's like perfectly chaste to his wife. You don't think of any other woman. You're not attracted to any other woman. You don't have a second thought. So I think out of devotion to your wife, that's part of your chastity. Like we need to like throw this word out. Men need to be chaste to their wives, because that can help tremendously. And so the austerity you do is always worth it, because in the end you get to go up. And the other principle is that Krishna consciousness is all about sense control, and sex is just one of the senses. So you're trying to, it's like, well, what's so sad? You're like super austere with your eating, you're super austere with your sleeping, you chant, you get up at 4 and chant, and then sexually you just like dive in the mud and just isn't it? It's like, so it's like, Prabhu, you've got a good thing going. It's just this one thing, If you get this one thing under control, you're in the rocket ship. You're there. You got the ticket. So it's worth it. And can I read one thing? We have time. This is cool. You've probably heard this before. This is by Bhakti Tirtha Swami. This is so nice.
While you're looking, I'll just comment, I really like what you said about play out the future. I've done that a couple times, and you think, okay, great, not great. But yes, she's a beautiful woman. Yes, you could talk to her. Yes, she may even be interested in you, although it's extremely unlikely. But okay, and yes, maybe you spend some time, okay, so then you get married, so then you lose your spiritual life, you lose your friends, you lose your reputation, you lose your money. She's going to want you to go to work. Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then you have children. When you play the whole thing out, it's like, forget it. Because the mind just makes you think, yeah, I'm just going to talk to her and we're going to fly to the heavenly planets and just enjoy sex gratification for an unlimited period of time. And no, but you play it out, no, this is, forget, like you said, the 3 seconds of pain to pull your senses back compared to, 30 years of misery when you really think about what it means. I think it's very, very wise advice.
Yeah, I always think, when I was 18, I left home because I didn't like my mother telling me what to do, and then I get married to a good mother. Telling me what to do. Hello, Mahatma. You realize you saw that beautiful woman, she's looking good, but she's gonna kick your rear end. Right? Okay. This is Bhakti Tirtha Swami. Today is the last day of my life. Tomorrow I must meet Srila Prabhupada. What will I say to him? What will he say to me? I will say to Srila Prabhupada, I am Ganesham Das, the one who distributed your books, sets of books to the academic communities. Srila Prabhupada will say, very nice, but have you given up sex desire for me? I will say, I have never broken any of the regulative principles, and I have faithfully chanted over 16 rounds every single day since I joined the movement, never once missing. Srila Prabhupada will say, very nice, but have you given up sex desire? Sounds like a good rap. Maybe we should make a t-shirt. Very nice, but have you given up sex desire? I will say I have maintained a program of fasting all day on every Ekadasi, normally from liquids and all foods for the most of my life as a devotee. Srila Prabhupada will say, very nice, but I will say, I have also maintained a program of eating mainly once a day for most of my life. Srila Prabhupada will say, very nice, but I will say I have for most of my devotional life maintained sleeping less than 6 hours a day. Srila Prabhupada will say, very nice, like how do you give up 6? I have faithfully, anyway, you get the idea. So it's kind of like the same point I'm making. You're doing all these amazing tapasyas, and then you just jump in the mud, by not controlling yourself sexually. Just undo it all. It doesn't make sense. Hare Krishna.
We're going to open up for questions in just a minute. You can be thinking of some questions, but it's from your little work. Gopal, read what, as a young person, and I'm sure you're a professor and you're respected as a committed and serious Vaishnava, what advice do you sometimes give to people, or would you give to the one or two of us in this room that may not be perfectly free from all material desire?
Both married and unmarried, when I was unmarried and married, particularly in terms of this challenge, I found that good association was the most helpful. Even, if I could chant 32 rounds, or it didn't help me as much, but just good association of advanced devotees was really helpful. Because, for example, when I was studying in England, in Oxford, we were living in a devotee house. It's a 63 Divinity Road, and I was living with devotees there. And I know that in spite of all the good training my parents gave and all those things, if I was living in the dorms, I probably would not have survived it. Just the association is so strong. It's like, one room to the other room, people are exchanging, beds and rooms and all these things. You really have to be a Paramahansa to just transcend that atmosphere. And what really protected me was association. I remember we were at 63 Divinity Road, and down the street at the corner was the only strip club in Oxford. And at night it had XXX outside of it, things. And so it's just like you every day have to face these and walk by it, and the only thing that I go back to the house, and there was the temple, the devotees, like, okay, this is like, it would reorient me, it would bring me back together. So I always give young people this, like, look, go to any college you want, go to Harvard, Oxford, wherever you like, but go to a place where you can live with devotees. Because, you are your association. If you're with a very passionate association, passion, ignorance, 24/7, Maya is much stronger than we are. And I think that's very true about householders also. And in our movement, we're a little bit losing that culture, which is the basic teaching of the Bhagavatam, that when the saintly souls come, the householder should open their homes and invite them in and take the association. That we become a very, very closed culture where we don't want guests in our home, and we don't want, it's like everything's too much. But we see, spiritual culture, and the Prabhupada, it was, the saints would come and stay, the brahmacharis would stay, the vanaprasthas would stay. And with that association, we start to realize that, there's more to life, and they uplift our consciousness. And interestingly, in the story of Narad Muni and, I forget the name of the Habishyas, are they the sons of Daksha? Hayalashvas, yes. So, Narad Muni liberates them by giving his instructions. That verse is here, but just to save time, just describe it. So he liberates them, and then he does another set of 1,000. So Daksha keeps producing children, and he keeps making them into sannyasis. And Daksha then becomes very angry, comes to Narad Muni and says, how am I supposed to populate the world if you do this? Plus he says, your process is wrong, it's not right, because unless a person experiences married life, they cannot get free from the desire. And that's why you're doing them a disservice by not letting them go through the varnashram system and making them into sannyasis right away. And Yayati's eldest son, Yadu, he also uses that same reasoning with his father and says, I won't exchange my old age with you because I have to experience this to become a devotee. And he's a great soul. So his reasoning is correct, but then Prabhupada writes in the purport in the Haviyashis section that there's one exception to it, that we can actually transcend this without experiencing everything. And he says that's by the association of great souls like Narad Muni. That's the one way by which you can actually transcend or overcome this desire, is by having that nice company. And especially the advanced grihasthas, like we have here, just seeing their example, their life, and how the Prabhupada says they want to purify their existence, due to which then those desires become very minor, or you could say they become very pleasant, happy, like he was saying, we can actually experience happiness. I think that the examples and the association really is what helps a lot.
Thank you. So let's take some questions. We have about 25 minutes for questions. So yeah, we're going to turn off the video. Just so we can make sure everybody feels comfortable to ask them.